On the one side, we see more extreme events. We see more climate shocks. When you look at the statistics, we see that extreme weather events have more than doubled over the past 4 decades. We see increasing losses and damages to food systems. In 2020, last year, climate extremes were the main driver for acute hunger in 15 countries. They have displaced 30 million people internally within borders. And then if people are not experiencing extreme events like floods, storms, or droughts, then they usually experience what we call climate stresses, changes in rainfall patterns. The monsoon doesn't come when it used to come. Diseases, pest infestations, they shift in patterns. All of a sudden you have malaria in places where this was not a big public health issue before. Heat stress in livestock. So all these stresses, they don't generate large humanitarian operations, but they make livelihoods more vulnerable. And then when even a small disruption happens to that livelihood, then you can immediately have a situation of acute hunger and dependency on humanitarian aid. And maybe let me add another dimension, which is the conflict dimension. When you have resource scarcity, basically different groups competing over water in climate hotspots, or when you have displacement through climate extremes, then you have a very high risk of social tensions. So then different groups come in contact with each other. They're all under pressure, and these social tensions can also erupt in conflict. So there is this element as well. And this is why we call climate change a risk multiplier. So it's not only about the amount of food that can be produced or the extreme events that keep destroying food systems. It's also the detour of social tensions and conflict that we will see between countries. If, for example, you have a large transboundary river system like the Mekong or the Nile, but you also see it within countries when farmers and herders, for example, compete for the same resources. So all these things affect humanitarian aid. And maybe this is the last number that I will throw at you. We have done a bit of modeling 2 years ago on what a 2 degrees warmer world would mean for global food insecurity. This was a research program with the European Union. And we found that in a 2 degrees warmer world, we are likely to have 189 million more people at risk of hunger than today. So right now we are talking about roughly 811 million people who do not have enough to eat. In a 2 degrees warmer world, we are going over a billion. And that will mean, in a sense, a runaway train if we add additional degrees to this equation. The modeling at 4 degrees is already off the charts. We're talking over 1 billion in addition to the ones we have today. So it's more of an exponential growth. And for humanitarians, this is a massive concern because we only have probably a decade to build the systems that can help us manage these runaway humanitarian needs. This is why we are concerned.